Hello, and welcome to another episode of Stories Sustain Us, where we explore the incredible journeys of individuals making a positive impact on our planet. I'm your host, Stephen Schauer, and today's guest is someone who has spent her life deeply connected to the natural world, both personally and professionally. Growing up on a farm in Iowa, Julie Claussen developed a strong relationship with nature, supported by a loving family who encouraged her even when academic expectations weren't always in her favor. Her determination and curiosity led her to pursue higher education, where a chance encounter with a classmate changed her career path forever. Today, Julie is a leading researcher in environmental science with a special focus on the fascinating world of fish and their reproductive behavior. In this episode, Julie shares how fish exhibit intelligence, learning from their surroundings, and why sustainable fishing practices are so crucial for their conservation. Her work has the power to influence fisheries management policies, and her innovative ideas, like spawning sanctuaries, offer new hope for protecting fish populations. We'll also dive into Julie's journey to Bhutan, where she explored the delicate balance between hydropower development and ecosystem health, and discussed the global importance of understanding fish migration patterns. But Julie's story doesn't stop with research. She's also a passionate advocate for science, fighting against anti-science movements and believing that scientists must be effective communicators, engaging both the public and policymakers. Let me tell you a bit more about Julie before we cast our line into the interview. Julie Claussen is a fisheries research biologist who has worked in the areas of sustainable fisheries management and the conservation of native fish populations. The majority of her career was spent at the Natural History Survey at the University of Illinois. Recognizing the need for scientists to engage with natural resource constituents, Julie was one of the founding partners of the Fisheries Conservation Foundation, where she now serves as Director of Operations. She has worked extensively with international partners, including World Wildlife Fund Bhutan, the International Finance Corporation, and World Bank, on assessing the developmental impacts on rivers. Her work now focuses on effective ways to share science-based research with others so that decisions can be made for the long-term health of aquatic ecosystems. She has been part of several science communication training programs, including the ABT Narrative Training Course and the training team for the American Fisheries Society Science Communications programs. The focus of these programs are to work with professional aquatic scientists on how to adjust their messaging to engage and inspire their intended audiences. This episode is full of insights into how we can build a hopeful future by appreciating the interconnectedness of ecosystems and recognizing the importance of conservation. So, without further ado, let's dive into this fascinating conversation with Julie Claussen here on Stories Sustain Us, where we are inspiring action through the power of storytelling. Julie, welcome. How are you this morning?
I'm good. It's a chilly morning here in Ontario, but it's all good.
Nice. Yeah, it's a little chilly here in Seattle as well. So getting to that time of year where we're putting on longer jackets and stocking hats. So welcome to Story Sustain Us. Thank you so much for taking time to join me, and I'm looking forward to meeting you and learning about you and hearing your story. I know we kind of connected through Sean Donovan, who I had on. I think he might have been episode 10, and he suggested that you might be someone that I should talk to. So I appreciate Sean's advice, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you. So What's your story, Julie? Tell me a little bit about you. How did you get to where you are? Where'd you grow up, and how'd your kind of educational and professional life take you to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a farm in Iowa, small town, Traer, Iowa, and had five older sisters and one younger brother. So we had it was just a very idyllic childhood,
Yeah.
large family, just parents were very encouraging. Even coming from a small town, my mom was always, say, read Shakespeare or look in the encyclopedia, just, really broaden your horizons. So really fortunate to have, their support and
Yeah.
always asking questions and growing and that sort of thing. And yeah, I mean, it was just a small town where people cared about each other. People helped out when needed. Just I just think about Mayberry RFD, right? Like it's just the really perfect childhood, great friends, um, and growing up in a farm, just that ability to roam, right?
Yeah. How
We
big was
just
the farm?
I would take um, small.
Yeah.
Iowa farms back then were pretty small.
Pretty small. Oh,
We
yeah.
farmed about 350, 400 acres.
Yeah. Nice.
Um, yeah, yeah. And my poor dad had six girls that he was kind of traditional, but in the end, he had to have some of us drive a tractor and walk the
Yeah.
beans and all those things.
It's a working farm. People got to work.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I was the big tomboy though, so I wanted to be there.
Right on.
I did not want to be in the house, and so I tried to grasp onto all those things, being in 4-H and having cattle and all those good things.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, it was really great. And like I said, I would just take the horse out and be gone all day, right? Just riding the back roads or in the fields or whatever. So
Yeah.
always had an affinity to be outdoors pretty young age.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, so you said it was five sisters and one younger brother. Did I pick up on that? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
really.
lots of who's gonna get the first corn on the cob for dinner. It was
You know, that,
or
we had a huge
was there an
garden.
order for that?
We had, I guess, growing up on a farm, we butchered our own, pigs, and your mom had a big, garden, and dad grew plenty of sweet corn. So we never went hungry, that's for sure. I
Yeah,
don't
good.
remember a big competition for food.
Good.
But, they were, back then you didn't really buy, like if you bought soda or snacks, those were for very special times.
Yeah, those are
So I
treats,
do
right?
remember that. We were allowed like half a glass of soda, once a week as our big treat.
Yeah, nice. Which is probably all one really needs, to be honest.
Oh, right, exactly.
Yeah,
Compared to today, yeah, very
exactly,
different.
exactly. Right. So,
Yeah.
so then moving through school, then
Yeah.
you're in this small town in Iowa. How do you move through elementary school, middle school, high school? How's that going, and where does your life start kind of
Yeah.
transitioning?
I'm definitely the poster child for the student that did not excel in school and then ended up just fine.
Yeah, good.
I wasn't that great of a student. I kind of, probably a late bloomer on the academic side, but I loved learning, but I just didn't do that well in school. I didn't do that well in tests. In fact, my high school um, counselor told me I wasn't college material. And he
Oh
goes,
no.
Julie, I just think there's other options for you. I don't think college is right for you. And to be fair, looking at my performance, he was, wasn't probably that bad of an advice, but being pretty headstrong and you aren't going to tell me what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I went to college, obviously. Um, all my sisters had gone. I mean, it was just sort of unheard of that I wasn't going to go to college.
Yeah.
Um, and that was a bit of a struggle too. I was very lucky. I fell into a study group that really pushed me, and then it just became more natural as I grew. But when I think back of how I was in high school, I'm sort of surprised that I
Yeah.
ended up where I did. But it's a testament to people that you don't have to be a great straight A student early on in life you know, to go on to grad school or
Yeah.
achieve your dreams.
Absolutely.
You know?
100%. So where did you end up going to college then? Where do you stay in Iowa, or
I
where did
did.
you go? Yeah.
I did. University of Northern Iowa.
Okay.
And they had a great program there in biology that really focused on, it was a naturalist program.
Okay.
So it was a degree in biology, but really got a taste of all the different disciplines. So you had to take botany, you had to take ornithology, you had to take, they didn't have ichthyology, but they had just a lot of naturalist level courses. So you got an introduction to all of nature,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that was a really fabulous foundation for me to
Yeah.
really appreciate more at the ecosystem level rather than diving into like cellular biology or whatever.
Sure.
So yeah, yeah,
Mm,
and so
sounds
that
like a
was
great fit too for your, childhood adventuring outdoors to kind of transition into a college program that kind of gives you that generalist approach to all of these different types of studies. That sounds like that was a great fit as you were maybe transitioning into a better student or a different student.
yeah. It's funny when I think back because when you're trying to figure out what you're going to major in and you have all those questions about what are you going to do. And my one thing was I didn't want to work with people. It's really why I chose biology. It was just funny because, of course, there's no discipline where you can't work with you have to, you have to
Yeah.
be work with people. But at that day, I was like, I don't want to have to be nice every day. I don't want to have to like wake up and go to work and have to like perform. I don't, so I want to stay away from people. So I might as well go, work in the woods somewhere.
Yeah, nice, nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a
Yeah.
similar exploration when I was in college. I didn't know what I wanted to do either, and I was initially gravitating towards chemistry, really kind of down a pre-med path, and it kind of struck me like, well, I don't want to go to school for another 20 years, 10, 20 years to get a, whatever education I needed to kind of be a doctor or a surgeon or whatever. And I'd always loved the outdoors as well. And so I moved into an environmental science program that was also very uh, generalist, in which I had to take ecology courses and geology courses and biology courses, and of course the chemistry that the road I'd already been going down was helpful. But yeah, similar kind of idea of like, yeah, I'd rather just be outside. So I could appreciate where you're coming from.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So you're trucking through undergrad and you're getting this degree, and so what, and any kind of major milestones that happened during that period of your life that kind of sent you from, where you were there and kind of biology, and eventually, we'll take a turn, imagine, into more fisheries. But what was going on with you? Any major decision points or life things that were, kind of look back at and go, wow, that really mattered. That's how I got to where I am today.
I mean, it's, hindsight is a lovely thing.
Yeah,
But when
yeah,
I graduated, I basically just didn't say no to opportunities. And I think I moved 7 times that year. Just, oh, I could do this little internship here. Oh, I could work at, this environmental center for 3 months. So I did a lot of just little trying out, some of them were being a naturalist at a nature center. But it was all just sort of introductory stuff.
yeah,
And so that was great. You just meet a lot of great people, kind of you feel a little more settled, like, yes, this is the path for me. I'm loving this life. And then I was taking a field course, and I saw this guy with this T-shirt that said Illinois Natural History Survey. I'm like, well, that's a cool name. That sounds like something I should check into.
yeah,
So he told me about the Natural History Survey at the University of Illinois, and I applied to do an internship there. And so moved to Champaign, Illinois, and began my internship. And then they offered me a job, full-time job, working on a rivers project,
yeah,
in stream flow project. So that was my first jump into real research. I had done little programs uh, before, but that was like, this is real data, this is real analysis, this is
yeah,
yeah, real life work, and just loved it. Like the whole research aspect of of everything, of the team, of going out, getting muddy, problem solving. Okay, that stream's too high to put out our flow meters. So how are we
Sure.
going to fix that problem? What are we going to do? Just loved it.
So the guy
And
with the T-shirt, I want to go back in time for just a second. The guy with the T, did you know this guy, or was this like a random person with a T-shirt that kind of set you on this path?
he was in the course.
Okay.
Full
So,
disclosure, I ended
but
up dating him.
oh, that was a really important T-shirt.
It's a good t-shirt. Um, yeah, and he had worked at the Natural History Survey, so he just had great things to say, and
Yeah.
yeah, and about the institution. So yeah, I
Yeah.
always
So it wasn't entirely random, just a guy passing on the street that you're like, hey, tell me about the
yeah,
T-shirt.
he
But it
was
was
cute.
still, yeah, cute classmate wearing an interesting T-shirt. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Okay. Well, I just wanted that seemed like an important thing to ask, like, where did this, was just like you were in a store, or how'd you see this guy with a T-shirt? All right, sorry to interrupt the story about the real
no
research, which
worries.
is also important, but I just couldn't get that out of my head, like, where'd this guy come from with the T-shirt?
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's just amazing, in their pathway of life, like,
right,
in that fork, what leads to what. And I could
right,
have easily just never said anything to him. I could have easily just, not even noticed. But that moment is what led me on this path that, lasted, my life.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So
yeah,
that's perfect. I mean, that's such a lovely story. Thank you for sharing that, because
sure.
it is those random. Are they random? Are they not random? I mean, those are philosophical questions I don't know we'll ever have answers to,
Yeah.
but yeah, they're fascinating nevertheless, that these little moments in time that could be forgotten are
Mhm.
so instrumental in changing our direction and our path in life. So
Right.
that's wonderful. So how long did you stay in this research position then, as you were kind of getting your feet wet, literally and figuratively, in
Well, for the next
research?
30, 31 years.
Oh, just a little bit.
A lot happened in Champagne.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it, again, like just things that happen in your life that you're like, whoa, I was going here so I was really only planning to stay there for a year.
Yeah.
I was looking at graduate programs, then thinking, okay, it's time to, to go get my master's and go the next step.
Sure.
And then I met David Phillip, and he was a researcher. He was uh, a researcher,
Hmm.
and yeah, had his PhD, had a lab, had a program, and we started to date. And then right when we started to date, I'm like, dang, I can feel the bulging.
Yeah. Sure.
So it was clear that was going to be something special, and he ended up being my husband and colleague.
Nice.
So yeah, so we've that was the start of our partnership and our relationship, both work and personal. And so
Nice.
that's what kept me in Champagne. But again, just so fortunate for me because one, the Natural History Survey is it's just a really unique research institute. They do research on a variety of topics. We were in the at that time the Center for Aquatic Ecology, so it was all fisheries. But
Yeah.
yeah, just for me, both before I had my master's and after I had my master's, just allowed me a lot of freedom to do the work that I was interested in, be part of projects, and just continue to grow in skills. And yeah, it was pretty special.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So
So I stayed at the survey. I stayed at the survey
yeah.
for a few years, and then went to get my master's at University of Toronto. So
Okay.
I did end up going to grad school, but
Okay.
it
So
was
there's
still a little
more
bit.
to the story. Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a bit about that transition, I guess. So you have one foot then still in Illinois, I'm assuming, and then one foot in Toronto while you're doing your graduate program. Am I imagining that correctly, or
Yeah.
did
So
David join you in Toronto? Because I'm assuming there was some some long distance traveling involved for you between staying connected to Illinois and doing your grad work in Toronto.
Right. So part of David's research program was working in Ontario at the Queen's University Biology Station, and he had been
Okay.
working there for 3 or 4 years, and had said, I work with a researcher from at that time from University of Simon Fraser University out in British Columbia. So he goes, I think you might, be interested in working with Mart. So went up to the biology station for a summer, met Mart, came up with this project design, and he was interested in me coming up and working in graduate school. So that started sort of that phase in my life
Sure.
because of several things that happened and him moving universities. I actually collected a lot of data before I actually went to University of Toronto for the next 3 summers. But then I went to grad school. Our at Queen's University, it's on Lake Appinican, our research here, we have spent every summer here for the last 36 years, except during COVID when we couldn't get across the border.
Yeah.
And it's a huge part of our research program. So Ontario is, I like to joke, I'm half Canadian because I spend so much time up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah, so the whole Ontario Illinois connection is quite strong.
Nice. What was the gist of that initial study that kind of kicked off your grad school career? What were you looking at, and can you tell a little bit about the success or what you learned from that initial study, and how it has kind of continued to translate into whatever the different studies that came next and that you're still involved in?
Yeah, so it in the bigger picture, a lot of our work looks at the reproductive impacts of management, and we studied a group of species in the centrarchid family, so bass and bluegill, sunfish. And what is distinct about that group of organisms is they have male parental care.
Mm,
And so instead of, some fish just come in, spawn, and then both the male and the female leave.
right.
It's more like broadcast spawning. In centrarchids, the male comes in, builds a nest, attracts a female. The female comes in, lays her eggs, leaves. Another female may come in, but that male then is there on the nest and then
Yeah.
guards the nest.
Huh.
So in bluegill, they do that in a colony. So all the males come in, and it can be 10 males, it can be 100 males.
Wow.
Sometimes it can be 300 males come in and just build these nests in these honeycombs. And they're very territorial. So you can imagine, you have your little nest and then you have a nest right next to it. And if that male gets too close, they start fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And then the females come, and then, they have a choice of all these males that are, that are trying to get their attention, say, hey, I'm the strongest, toughest.
Yeah.
So what is it about that female choice? What are the factors that,
Right.
that influence that choice? So we looked at when you look at a colony where are the most eggs laid, what is the size distribution? Are the bigger males on the outside or on the inside? If you're on the outside of a colony, then the little fish can come prey on your eggs
Yeah.
more
There's more
easily.
predators. Sure. Sure.
Right.
Right.
So just all those factors that that can influence nesting success. Um, So it was fabulous. It was a really fun time of my life. So we
Yeah.
gather all the data by snorkeling. So every day you go out and you snorkel,
I was just
you
going to ask
map.
you, certified scuba, or is it all snorkeling?
Yeah,
I
it's
was,
all
yeah.
snorkeling. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all snorkeling, and you can map the colonies. So we put tags down. So put all these tags down. You float above it. You draw the colony, and then we do egg scores. So which is just a score whether they have a huge amount of eggs or hardly any eggs.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm telling you, If you don't think fish are smart, they are smart.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am sold on that. Being in the river water world myself for last 20 years, I know that, but I appreciate you mentioning that to
Yeah.
other audience members who might not be as knowledgeable as you are. So thank
Well,
you. But
I'll
yeah,
tell you a quick story.
yeah, please.
We were trying to do I was curious to see is a lot of males abandon their nest. So they'll come in, they'll spawn, they'll spend all of this energy, and then they'll abandon, right? So they've already lost all that energy. So why do they abandon? And
Yeah,
so one thing is it might just be energy, right? They just run out of energy. So if you fed a male on a nest, no matter what his egg score was, could you influence that
yeah,
decision whether to abandon or not? So, but you had to disassociate me from the food source, right?
sure,
So
sure.
well, we figured, okay, we'll get a long tube and we'll put a worm in it, and I'll blow a worm into the nest, right?
Yeah,
And try it. Well, they figured it out right away. Not only did they figure it out, they figured out that I was blowing, like it was starting here and going to the end of the tube.
yeah,
So they would come up and they'd bite my lip.
yeah. They were like, we just want to get to the source, right?
Yeah, I was like, at first I was like, what are you doing? And then I figured it out.
Yeah,
The next year, I was swimming in that same area, and these fish came up and tried to
they
bite my lip.
yeah they just remembered that's where the food
Yeah,
source was. Yeah,
yeah, it's unbelievable.
yeah. Well, there's, I'm sure, lots of lessons to kind of pull out of that when regard to observing wildlife. And that, as you said, disassociate. How do you create studies and conduct studies in which you're not artificially and unintendedly influencing the behavior of whatever you're studying, because your presence there is,
Right,
by your very presence there, likely to alter their behavior in some way or shape or form. So how do you,
exactly,
and that seems like such a fun part of your line of work, is how do you think through these different scenarios, and then, as we do in science, you test something and learn and change something and learn and change something and learn. So
exactly,
yeah, so thanks for sharing that, 'cause that is such a, one, illustrates the intelligence of the fish, but also then illustrates your challenge of what did you do next, I guess, in that story, just to take it one step further. I mean, did you have to change your behavior then, so that they would maybe go back to their more natural type of existence, or were you were your lips kind of a target for a while?
it's so crazy. But we had to scrap that experiment. We just couldn't get it to work, right? They
Sure,
just
sure.
associated us with food right away, so then that didn't work,
Right.
and it was kind of a side project, so we decided not to, there was probably other, certainly other methods that we could have done. So as time, so um, bluegill will always be close to my heart. They have just really an amazing life history.
Yeah.
But in the fisheries world, black bass are what is king. And
Yeah.
so Dave was working pretty heavily on smallmouth and largemouth bass. So I kind of converted over to working on the impacts of angling on
Yeah.
nesting bass, yeah, and all
And
different
the bass are
aspects of
king
that.
because of the fisher, the economy around fishing,
Right,
and the fact that that's what most anglers in these waterways want to try to catch. So that's
right,
the assumption why they're king, right? Okay, just want to make
right.
sure.
And
Yeah.
from Ontario down to Mexico, I mean they are
Yep.
really one of the top sport fish.
Main
But
sport fish, right?
on top of that, again with the parental care, just really really amazing life histories. So just from pure biology, they're just super fun to work with. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that. What's super fun about it?
So they again build nests, right,
Yeah.
and attract females. In the black bass, the male usually has a smaller body. Females have larger bodies, which is kind of an um, interesting thing. And they will do a courtship, attract a female, and then once they have their eggs, then it's really long term parental care. Bluegill are on the nest maybe 6, 7, 8 days, depending on the temperature, how fast things develop.
Yeah.
But with black bass, They are through eggs all the way up to that swim up fry. They stay with the fry ball, and then as the fry develop enough to, they really are with them until the fry develop a predator avoidance
Yeah.
behaviors.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it can be 30 days.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then their behavior kind of changes as each stage from egg. There's super, super aggressive. We'll be snorkeling and an aggressive smallmouth bass will knock your snorkel mask off your head. I mean, he'll just
Yeah.
slam right into you. You're a big thing, right?
Right.
Way bigger, and they're just so aggressive. And then that's the interesting thing too. There's personality differences. Some fish are that aggressive, and then some are shy and they back up, right? You're this big thing swimming, and then they back up.
Yeah.
And so that personality, that those differences in aggression are really interesting scientifically, and fisheries wise. So one of the things that we really look at is called fisheries induced evolution.
Okay.
So if anglers are out fishing, who are they going to catch? Well, they're going to catch the most aggressive fish.
Yeah, sure.
And if you're fishing during the nesting season, which is actually illegal in Ontario and very few states, but in most of the U.S. you can fish nesting bass. If you pull them off the nest, or if you're fishing and your lure lands next to their nest, it's going to be the most aggressive males that strike that.
Sure. And then you're obviously then impacting the future generational gene pool, right?
Exactly. If you're constantly removing the most aggressive fish, what are you left with? Yeah.
Wow. So has your work been part of what made fishing during nesting season in some areas illegal? Is your work kind of pointing that out, or how is your work tying in maybe to influencing sport fishing behavior and rules and regulations?
Yeah, so it's been a struggle of two different philosophies. The philosophy of that recruitment, so the from the egg stage to the fry stage up to the young of the year up to adults, right? That's the recruitment, right, of the young that then recruit into the adult population.
Yeah.
That is based on resources. It's based on food, and on competition. It's not really based on reproductive success. Where our research group argues it is completely tied to reproductive success.
Sure.
Yeah. So that changing that dogma and that philosophy in the fisheries world has been a bit of a mission.
Yeah.
And then collecting the data to show that the more successful males you have raising their young out in the lake, the better recruitment you'll have.
Yeah.
And that can be impacted through angling. So
sure. Yeah. And I imagine impacted through available, food sources and everything. But yeah, if you're not producing offspring, or your offspring production is damaged, that would seem to have a pretty significant influence on the quantity of the species going forward. So that makes sense. So
yeah, the important thing to know is even if you don't harvest the males, you pull the male off the nest. Well, there are all sorts of predators just waiting.
Then everything swoops in, right? So
eats all the eggs. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. They're all waiting for their opportunity to, get their next meal. Right. It's all interconnected, as we understand in deeper ways than we sometimes think. So yeah, it's all this, big dance of things that are connected. So
yeah. And I think because the growing season in Ontario is so short, they did recognize the vulnerability of the black bass, in Ontario. The opening season used to be the fourth Saturday in June. Now it's the third Saturday in June. There's a lot of fish still on their nest during that time. Each lake is different with temperature and when spawning starts. There's all sorts of complexities. So we have been pushing towards a different approach, a different management approach, which is spawning sanctuaries. So rather than just a closed season, you have a sanctuary that then there's no fishing.
Sure. Of a
And then
geographical
that last
area of
month.
the lake.
Right.
Is it?
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got a
Yeah.
couple pilot studies going with the ministry here. And just all really exciting ways to look at better managing lakes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now the fish species that you study, they're primarily, born, raised, and live their lives in relatively the same area, same body of water. It's not like a, salmon here in the Pacific Northwest that, spawn in the rivers and then, eventually make their way out into the Puget Sound and Pacific Ocean, and then eventually make their way back up to their spawning grounds. The fish you're studying are relatively staying in the same areas their whole life cycle, do they have some? Yeah.
Yeah, depends
tell me a
where
little
we
bit
are.
more. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
so it depends where we are. Our work in Ontario is primarily focused on black bass, largemouth and smallmouth bass. We do a lot of work over in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
And work on migratory species there. So the main species is the golden mahseer. It's this gorgeous, big Himalayan fish that is just made to swim, in turbulent rivers.
Yeah.
And they're a migratory fish. Unlike salmon, they they migrate both ways, right? They migrate upstream to spawn and then come down to overwinter and then repeat. So
yeah,
it's a two-way show for.
So how did you get involved in going from, lake work in Ontario to doing work in around the world? Because it's not just Asia that you're in, right? If I remember right, you're doing work in other places around the world. You want to talk a little bit about that evolution of your career?
Yeah, so and this is one thing that really drew me to fish, because when you're a biologist coming out, you can work on bats, you can work on,
Sure.
tigers, you work on whatever you want, right? So then how do you decide, like, what do I want my focus to be? And
Right.
a part of that is, again, sort of what road you get pulled towards. Mine was my first internship was just on a river, and I really liked that. But what what I really appreciate is, one, fish don't have boundaries, borders, right?
Yeah.
So, they're on a river, and then the questions, there's a lot of overarching questions that you can say, okay, when we're working on parental care, then it makes sense to work on centrarchids and looking at that. When you're working on migratory fish and looking at pathways, we've done work in the Bahamas on bonefish.
Okay.
And they migrate to spawn. And a lot of those overarching questions aren't that different from, our work in Bhutan and Nepal, where what habitat requirements, what food requirements, what sort of development really impacts that pathway and that connectivity. So it's just beyond, oh, we're working on this species of fish.
Yeah.
And that's what I really love about the work that we do.
Yeah. And you focus primarily on freshwater then, even though they may have some migratory, or you're equal opportunity fish lover.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like I said, we've done a lot of work in the Bahamas on bonefish, which are marine.
Yeah.
But what drew us to we started working in Bhutan on the mahseer. Again, it's just all about who you know and your connections.
Sure. How'd that come about?
So my husband David has a brother who was serving on the board of World Wildlife Fund.
Okay.
And had been to Bhutan and was sitting in on some meetings. They were having some hydropower projects, and at that time really asking, okay, what are the impacts of the rivers?
Sure.
Yeah. And we have this fish that the largest in the river system, and also has a religious significance to the country. And so, right, and was already, probably stressed, at least on the threatened side. So Michael just goes, well, my brother and sister-in-law are fish biologists. Why don't we ask them what to do? So we got a couple phone calls, and we said, well, if we were going to, look at this, here are the questions that we would pose, because hardly anything was known about this fish. Like especially in Bhutan, they knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
So, which is actually, for a biologist to think, oh, that's great, but it's actually hard because you know nothing, right?
Sure.
Um, and so, and we said, well, you're going to have to track it. You're going to figure it out. So here's the methods that we would suggest using. And then they're like, great, come do it.
Well, all right.
We're like, all right, I guess we'll come to Bhutan and do it. So yeah, we did. We went over, we did a scouting trip, we met with the prime minister, everybody was just ready to support it. And we started this crazy journey over there, looking at this fish that nobody had really looked at this level,
Yeah.
to really understand the migration pattern. And
How long ago was that? Did this study start?
our first trip over was in 2014.
Okay.
And then we started in 2015 through 2019, was our first river. And just, it was just discovery after discovery. Really, I mean, to be a biologist in that setting where super remote, like logistical problems everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and just having this information come in, we never expected that. Was pretty special.
Sounds fun. Yeah, sounds like a
Yeah.
blast.
Hard,
and
then
but it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I know people go, "You're so lucky." I'm like, well, wait till you see where we sleep sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe you won't be so jealous.
Yeah, it's not at the Four Seasons; it's in the Four Seasons, right?
Yeah. And then we've continued to work there. So we've started a second project.
Nice.
The second project on a different river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is just sparking a sidebar. A lot of little questions about this particular project. Are they still moving forward with the hydropower, and are they looking at fish ladders, or what is how are they going to try to preserve this migratory pattern of this fish while also serving the needs of people with hydropower? I mean, those are the balances that we have to wrestle with in this world. So how's that progressing?
These are big questions for the world today.
Yeah.
For a while, Bhutan was putting the brakes on most of their hydropower projects just to see what the current ones were, just the whole thing, if the economics and everything was making sense.
Sure.
Then COVID happened, and I keep seeing this in country after country. Is COVID happened, the economy just tanked. They're poor. They're a little desperate. The traditional means of doing things have changed. So I will say they're they're definitely moving forward with hydropower. It's just
that was my assumption. Yeah.
Yeah. In a country, and this is true for Nepal as well, in countries that have these fast-flowing rivers, it's just an easy answer to their economy.
Yeah.
And so, understandable.
Western nations that may be more economically advanced these days. I mean, our history. I'm here in the Pacific Northwest. There's all kinds of dams here that were built, 100 years ago, when we were a different economy, and so they can't. It's easy for, I think, folks in Western economic, socioeconomic conditions to look at others and say you shouldn't do that, and forgetting the history of, oh yeah, we did that too when we were kind of in a similar socioeconomic space. So makes sense.
It is so true, Stephen. I'm very aware when we work overseas that we are coming from privilege, and we're coming from, and you can come in as a privileged biologist and say, you need to save your rainforest, you need to save your rivers.
Right.
And so completely understandable.
Yep. Easy for us to say.
Yeah. But I feel like my role in it is to be a voice for intact ecosystems
Sure.
and and connectivity, and that it's not just to save nature, that those have a really real human, not only benefits, but consequences.
Hmm.
And once I was over there and said, we have a lot to offer. In, in North America, we built our dams 150 years ago and are seeing the impacts of that. And in fact, we
Right.
are taking dams down.
Right. Learn from
Yeah.
our mistakes. Right.
And he said, well, Julie, you need to let us make those mistakes too. I was
Right.
like, you're breaking my heart.
Yeah. That's the hard part of it, because we got benefits from those dams for 100, 150 years that
Right.
positioned us into a place now where maybe we don't need the hydropower as much, or so yeah, those are hard arguments and hard
Yes,
discussions
but
to have.
when you look at the amount of um, money that is put in for mitigation because of those
Sure.
dams,
No,
I mean,
absolutely. If you can paint that bigger picture,
millions.
right?
Yeah,
If you can
yeah.
paint that bigger life cycle of, are there other solutions? Are there better things to do? But yeah, that puts you, I imagine, in a delicate place of how do you approach those, recognizing
Mhm.
their socioeconomic conditions without a Western, you know, kind of on a high horse kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
how do you have those hard conversations, but do so in
Mhm.
a culturally appropriate way? I mean,
Right.
that's a part of your biological work that I imagine you grew into over the years. That it wasn't a course you took back at Northern Iowa.
No, but I will say, I think this is the responsibility of scientists in this
Sure.
day,
Yeah.
is to really be able to articulate that this is why you should save an aquatic ecosystem. This is why you should have an offset to those dams, a nature
Yeah.
offset. This is why a free-flowing river, and a true free-flowing river, not just a section of it,
Right.
can benefit.
Is
What are the
important.
ecosystem services? What
Right.
are the climate change? All of those things, and I
Right.
don't think we are doing a very good job at that.
Yeah.
And this
Well,
is where I have spent, at least the last few years, really focusing on that messaging. Like, how do you um, not even convince, but how do you just educate on that?
right.
Yeah.
Right. I thank you for bringing that up, and I love your perspective on that, and that's partly the basis of this program. Thank you for
Mhm.
being on it, but it's recognizing, and I've come to a similar conclusion that you just articulated, that um, approaching people solely with science, solely with the data that just says, look, here are the scientific facts. That's really not enough to move people to your argument. That's really not enough to get them to see your side. It's how do you tell that story? How do you communicate the data that you have into a story that makes sense, that makes people go, oh, now I see your point. Because numbers on a spreadsheet, while valuable to the scientists, that the scientist sees the story that's there. What your data is telling you, but how do you articulate that to the
Mhm.
policymaker or to the citizen that is trying to make a decision about what do they support or what do they do, and that's, I think, a critical component of moving forward. I think you nailed it. We those who appreciate scientists, whether they're active in the field or just a supporter of it, how do we better communicate the data in a way that resonates with someone? So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I was just in Hawaii at the American Fisheries Society annual meeting. And it's a meeting I just love. Really reinvigorates my love, and you're connected to all these scientists that are
Yeah.
doing, work on commercial fishing, recreational fishing, marine, freshwater. It's just this whole big mix of of fish scientists. But what always makes me laugh, especially now that I've delved more into the communication, is it doesn't matter where you go throughout that whole meeting. It can be breakfast, it can be lunch, it can be a break. Like, they're talking data, right? They're just
Yeah.
talking to each other. And
Right.
it
Right.
just, it's like, like everybody's talking work, although it's not really work for us, right? It's just our
Right.
life. It's just
Right.
everybody's just like steeped in all of this. And it just cracks me up. It's like, we aren't talking about our kids. We aren't talking about our hobbies. We're talking about, what we found or what study we're doing. Um, which kind of brings it back full circle is I think as a, like we really gravitate towards that.
Yeah.
And so we're used to talking in that language. So how do you take that energy and that passion and that love and change the language so then it can be, like you said, in a story that people can assimilate?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because all the cognitive biology and science is showing that facts are not changing minds. Facts are not
Yeah.
is what inspiring people. Yeah,
Right.
so
Right. Yeah. I would, Sean, our mutual
yeah.
friend, and the other scientists and engineers that I've worked with, and I'm still working with these days, for 20, 25 years of my career, I would tell them similar what you just said, is like, when you go to your conferences, talk your science with all of your other folks, talk your engineering with all of your other, like, that's where you go talk that language, because everybody's going to get it and everybody's going to just understand it. Everywhere else you go, you have to talk like normal person speak.
Yeah.
And, let's work together to figure out, like, if you can't explain it to me, and I'm putting on my, I have, an environmental science degree. So I know enough to be like knowledgeable on the language and what you're
Mhm.
doing, but I'm nowhere near uh, capable of doing what you do, but I understand the language enough. But I also then get talking to the average citizen or the elected official or whatever the case may be. So I was like, explain it to me. And if I don't understand what you're saying, then you're still at the conference. You're still talking to your peers, and then we kind of collaborate and work together so that I could articulate it back to them. Oh, so what you're saying is X, Y, and Z. And then we could hit on that storytelling that the data is still intact, the facts are still relevant, and we're not bending the truth to the story. We're just building the story around the truth in a way that people can understand it.
Right.
So I totally, I can see, I imagine Sean was there with you in Hawaii, and you guys were probably just having great conversations about data.
I work with so Sean was part of our climate ambassador program, so he knows Randy. I work with Randy Olson and his narrative training
Yeah.
program, and so he does the and, but therefore uh, way of storytelling. And one thing Randy challenges people in the course is to, they think about their problem, they write their statement, and then he goes, okay, tell me your problem in 5 words. And then they start talking. He goes, 5 words. And
Yeah.
they start talking. He's like, 5 words.
Yep. Yeah.
It is so hard to for everyone,
Yeah.
including me, is to
Me too.
boil
Yeah.
it down to. And so and it's such an interesting exercise because for all scientists that are just you have to let go, right,
Mm-hmm.
of certain amounts of information and get at the core of your message. So it's just wonderful training, but it is it's always amusing because it's just
Yeah. And that's brilliant. That's such a beautiful way of getting, like you said, to the core, to the point. If you can't say it in a single sentence,
right.
then you haven't refined it enough. You don't, no one's gonna follow you if you can't just get it to the point. So that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Julie, I know I want to be respectful of time. We're getting kind of near the end of the hour, and I want to give you a chance, to do a call to action and let folks know how they can support you or what they can do. Before we get to that, is there anything else about your work or that you want to kind of make sure you touch on that we haven't already talked about? Because I know I was pulling you on sidebars all over the place. So is there anything else before we kind of get to the call to action and look to the future that we want to touch on?
Only that I just work with so many great people that prop me up, right? And Anytime I do this, I'm like, oh, I should have mentioned this person. I should have mentioned this. Because those are the people that, really make, I said I didn't want to work with people back when I was 18 years old, but that is, uh, in this profession, as you know, you meet just some really incredibly dedicated and smart and creative and fun people. And
Yeah.
so I just feel really blessed to work with so many of the partners, both in the science side and in the communication side. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you
you
for
know.
sharing that. I appreciate it. Just, I feel like I've met you, an incredibly dedicated, smart, and creative and fun person. So I do agree that we get to meet some amazing human beings in this line of work. So thank you
Yeah.
for acknowledging that. Yes, you don't do your work in a vacuum by yourself. So,
Yeah, for sure.
so what is your call to action after folks have listened to this or watched this and they're feeling inspired and wanting to help make the world a better place? What can people do to support your work specifically, or what do you think they should do in their own communities around the world to whatever your call to action is? It's your time to tell people what to go do now.
Yeah, as a scientist, I think that I do feel like science is going to save our world, but people have to appreciate and accept that. The anti-science movement is fierce, and I don't think that it is even the majority, but it is often the loudest.
It's very loud. Yep.
We saw it during the pandemic,
Yep.
um, and and that trickles down. That trickles down to all types of science, even fisheries science. So I think it is, if you're not a scientist, just talking about the need for evidence-based science. If you're a scientist, I feel extremely strong that we can no longer sit in our offices and write papers and publish in journals. That is an important part of science, and certainly peer reviewed is an extremely important. But our role in today's world is our problems are huge,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that we have to be a voice. And it's not even promoting our opinion, it's promoting the evidence-based science to
Yeah.
say we are in trouble. And if you read about biodiversity, of course climate change is on everybody's mind. I'm just such a passionate, strong believer that we have to have intact ecosystems for this world to continue to function.
Yeah.
And so that protecting those. So my call to action is, if you are a scientist, you have to step up. And in order to do that, there's lots of science communication training programs. And my friend Brian Palermo, he's part of our communication training program. He's an um, improv comedian.
Yeah.
And
Love
yeah,
that.
but he uses his techniques to work with scientists.
Yeah.
And
Improv is so great. Improv
yeah,
is
so
so
great.
great for communication. Absolutely.
Yeah. So he always goes, if you try and try these techniques in communication and you're 14% better, and you're only 14% better, well, guess what? You're 14%. That's what.
Right.
So I think sometimes people get a little nervous, like, oh, I don't want to be out there, in the front of the room, talking to the garden club. But it's so much more than that. It's just how to communicate about the science, and we don't have to strive for perfection, but we
Right.
all can be better. And it's certainly a journey, as you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is my challenge, is just to really look at how we communicate every day. I'm incorporating new ideas into how I can do it better. Um, Sometimes it's big things like hydropower, and sometimes it's just really small things like, you know, how to get kids excited about, salamanders or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It all adds up. It all matters. So
yeah,
that's thank you. That's a great call to action. And yeah, any scientists who may be watching this, yeah. Well, and if you want a platform, reach out, because I'll put you on the show. So
yes, exactly.
you want one place to practice talking, here it is. But yeah, we definitely need the scientists of the world to use not only their scientific talents and their brain power and their thinking, but we need their voices as well. Absolutely. The
Yeah, yeah,
anti-science voices, as you said, are loud and often well funded. So we need the collective voice of the majority of folks we need that voice to rise up as well. So thank you. That's great. A great call to action.
Yeah, and I'll just plug our training team.
Yeah, please.
We work, it's through American Fisheries Society, and then Fisheries Conservation Foundation and Exact, and Sea Grant is also, we're all part of those organizations, but it's myself, Drew Winters, Carolyn Hall, and Katie O'Reilly. And we have worked together. We were challenged to put together a communication program for climate action for the American Fisheries Society, and then it grew into a training program that Sean was part of our cohort.
Is this open to anyone, or who's this open for? So that people can?
Well, we have grants to run different programs. We don't have one open right now, but if someone is interested in a training or a workshop, they can certainly contact me. But what we all come from different walks of life, and we're all ages. We have different perspectives, and it's really been an amazing growth of how to build a program that has that makes a better communicator.
Yeah.
And we've all been part of science communication training where it kind of focuses on one thing, and so we try to put together a larger package of longer term of training, so you can really feel like you've walked away with some really concrete skills to work on. So it's been just a really lovely journey with me working with these three people, and every time we talk, we're always tinkering and looking and reading new papers and bringing in new cognitive science, and it's pretty special.
Wonderful. Well, I will put your information on the show notes so people can contact you to get more information about that, or to if they have funding available and want to bring you in. Sounds like if someone funds your group, you'll train an organization or a group of folks. Is that how that works?
Yeah, we had a grant from NOAA that ran three cohorts of our climate ambassador program.
Yeah.
We got some funding through the state's program, so we ran one for the state fisheries biologists, the climate fellows program.
Yeah.
We're now working in one of the NSF lead grants to run a science communication and policy program. We've done some work, just some shorter term programs with National Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management. So
nice.
All range of professional resource managers. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. We'll make sure to let folks know how to get in touch with you so they can follow up with you on that. So, and I may follow up with you offline on that for another issue. So expect to hear from me with my other hat on, my work hat on.
Be awesome.
Yeah. Well, Julie, so we thank you for that call to action, and I end every episode by asking my guests about their hopes for the future, and we talk about hard things, and there's climate challenges and the loss of biodiversity and loss of habitats and ecosystems. I mean, these are troubling, difficult things. So wanting to leave the episode on a higher hopeful note, I always ask these same three questions, and I'm approaching hope from kind of a mind science perspective of defining hope as you have a vision for a better future, but you also feel that you have some agency to make that vision come to be, that there's a process, there's steps, and that you feel you can effectuate that future vision. Doesn't mean you're going to get there. Doesn't mean it's going to be easier without problems and failures along the way. And you might not get there, but there's a vision, and you feel you have agency to help make that happen. So I'm going to ask you three questions and kind of just rapid fire. Give the doesn't have to be a 5-word answer, but a short your first thought that comes to mind type of answer. And are you ready to go through the three questions about hope? All right. So Julie, what is your vision for a better future? It can be for you personally, professionally, or for the world. So what's your vision for a better future?
The appreciation that at its core, people are good and want to do the right thing.
Why is that your vision for the future, better future?
Because the more I travel, the more I meet people, the more, diverse opinions and religions. And, I just always walk away with that people are just good, right? I think at a core, and I think oftentimes it's the opposite, right? People see the bad in humanity. And I think the more that I extensively travel, that there are connections that really people do want a better life for their children. They do want clean water. They do want to continue to fish. They do appreciate nature. Sometimes we just have to promote more of that, or connect more of that. And I think the more that we can connect humanity to nature, that goodness will just grow.
All right. So the last question. Imagine now we're in that future and it exists. It's real. It's happening right now today, where people are seeing the good in others more than they see the not so good or the unpleasant, and people are connected more to nature, and that kind of self-fulfilling circle of seeing the good, connecting to nature helps you see more good, helps you connect to more nature. That's happening right now. How do you feel?
Content.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think we all wake up sometimes and feel that anxiety of where the world is going, and sometimes it's just hard to sit back and feel content.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate on my cabin, my off the grid cabin here. I can go out in Rock Point and feel pretty content, but I realize that's in a bubble, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to be able to feel that wherever I travel in the world.
Perfect. Well, Julie, thank you so much for joining me on Stories Sustain Us today. And I'm going to do my little part every day to try to build a world that meets your vision for a better future, so that you can feel contented and I can feel contented and others likewise can feel that way. So thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate your time, and I'll
Yeah.
give you the final word.
Well, and I just want to thank you, Stephen. I think these sort of efforts, I love the name of your podcast. It just draws people right in. But yeah, we, in this day and age of communicating online, right? These ways that can connect are wonderful, and I just applaud you for this effort and for your work.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate it. I'm
Yeah.
very grateful for your work as well, making the world a better place. So thanks.
Okay.
Take care. All right.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. And that brings us to the end of this incredible conversation with Julie Claussen. What an inspiring journey. From our early days growing up on a farm in Iowa to becoming a leading voice in fisheries research and conservation. Julie's passion for nature shines through in everything she does, whether it's her groundbreaking work on the intelligence of fish or her advocacy for sustainable fishing practices that protect both species and ecosystems. We've learned so much today from her: the importance of understanding the interconnectedness of ecosystems, innovative approaches like spawning sanctuaries, and the global significance of tracking migration patterns. Julie's work takes her across the world, where she's helping to balance development with the health of local ecosystems. Through it all, her message is clear. Scientists must step up as advocates, using their voices to promote evidence-based practices and connect people with the natural world. And I couldn't agree more with Julie on this issue. I really appreciated that part of the conversation where she talked about her work, not only gathering the data as the scientist that she is, but her work also training other scientists on how to communicate data, how to talk to lay persons and policymakers, and making sure that their important information, the important evidence-based data that they're gathering actually moves the needle, that actually gets used. It's really kind of the point of this show, that Stories Sustain Us, that there's all these important facts and figures that people like Julie are out there doing amazing things around the world to make the world a better place for everyone. But if we don't package that information up and that data, if we don't really wrap that up in a story and tell it to someone, the data doesn't really do much. It's great to have, but we got to package it in a story that actually people will relate to, that they'll care about, and then that will move them into doing something about it. So I really appreciate what Julie's message was today. And as a great example, the story around how they kind of discovered the intelligence of fish and the memories of fish. When the fish decided the food's not coming from the end of that pipe, the food's coming from her mouth. Let's go get the food at the source, and start nibbling on her, lips and trying to get to the food in her mouth. She could have just packaged that story up and we'd learned that the fish have intelligence, and believe me. But she didn't. She packaged it up in a way that was really engaging and entertaining, drew me in anyway as a listener, and I'm going to remember that now. I'm going to remember that story of Julie snorkeling over the nest of some fish and trying to study them, and them surprising her with their intelligence and nibbling on her lips. So it's that type of storytelling that we can connect with, that's going to make it memorable and then make us want to do something about it. Like, the spawning sanctuaries idea of how do we protect these fish nurseries, basically. So really excited about what Julie's doing, and continue to wish her great success in her own research, but as well in her trainings to help other scientists learn how to communicate these wonderful stories around their work. And since we're talking about stories and the tying that in with using your voice, the scientists need to use their voice. You audience members, you need to use your voice, tell your stories, tell other people what you've learned in a way that can engage and connect with people. I also want to talk about the importance of using your voice when it comes to voting. Talked a little bit about that in the last several episodes, if you've been watching up until now. And we're nearing the November 5th election. And for me, this is an important, very important election cycle. They all are important election cycles, but this is a big deal for me personally. And imagine if you're listening to or watching this program, it is to you as well. So get out and vote. Encourage others in your circle of influence, your family, your friends, to make sure that they get out and vote. I'm not going to tell you who to go vote for, but do your homework, find the candidate that is most aligned with your desires and your hopes for the future. It may not be perfectly aligned, but find the candidate that is most closely aligned to what you envision the future to be, and get out and vote, and encourage others to do the same. It's incredibly important that we use our voice, not only tell stories, but at least in a democracy, it only works if people get engaged. It only works if people go use their voice and go vote. So please don't sit on the sidelines this election cycle. Get engaged and get out there and use your voice and go vote. Now with that, let me thank Julie once again for sharing her story with us today. Her hopeful vision for the future and reminder of the goodness in humanity are exactly what we need as we continue our own efforts to create a more sustainable world. And thank you, audience, for joining Julie and me on this episode of Stories Sustain Us. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. I'd love to hear from you, so shoot me a message. And please be sure to tell your family and friends. I ask this every week, but it's really important. Word of mouth will help spread the show as much or more than any advertising I can do. So please tell your family and friends about Stories Sustain Us. Really appreciate all your support. And since I just talked about the importance of voting, I want to let you know that Stories Sustain Us is going on a short break as we near the November 5th election. Since my attention, and likely yours, will be focused on the election, I thought it best to hold off on the next episode of Stories Sustain Us until we get past these last few crazy weeks of this election cycle. So as I mentioned, please go use your voice and get out there and go vote. Now, in the next episode of Stories Sustain Us, following the election, I speak with a longtime journalist and nature writer, who's based in San Antonio, Texas. We have a fascinating conversation about her first book, The Monarch Migration, Its Rise and Fall. Yes, next time we'll be talking about the iconic monarch butterfly. But we cover so much more in this conversation than just talking about this iconic insect. We talk about the interconnectedness of nature and humanity, drug cartels, avocados, competing scientists and scientific theories, the impacts of climate change, and the importance of healthy, diverse ecosystems. There are some really great stories told in this next interview that I'm confident will entertain and educate you and leave you inspired to make positive changes in your community. So following this little hiatus, the next episode of Stories Sustain Us will be available on November 12th at storiessustainus.com, wherever you listen to podcasts, and YouTube. In the meantime, please keep embracing the power of storytelling and remember that each of us has the ability to make a difference. And go vote. Until next time, I'm Stephen Schauer. Please take care of yourself and each other. Take care.